got to make space for the couple of clips which we are hoping to watch. Yeah, so I thought I'll start today by asking us a couple of things. I have this little bunch of things arranged here. I don't know if you've noticed. Okay. So I kind of will come to that. Okay. But just wanted to ask you: any of you went for mass today? Okay. And what language mass did you go for? French. You went for French. Okay. And English. Any other languages? Okay. I'm asking a few random questions. It might sound random, but it's not. Okay. And then traditionally on Thursdays, what mysteries of the Rosary do we recite normally? The Luminous Mysteries. You remember this? Luminous Mysteries. And you know this book? I mean, I'm sure you know the UCAT, but this is the BAP of UCAT. This is where UCAT comes from, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Okay, I used this book to prepare for this session, so that's another random sort of info. The CFIG leaders met the other day to speak about how to evangelize. Okay, so you know that's another random a bit of news. I'm just stating these. Okay, I'll come to what these have in common, and then the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, the 3:00 prayer is something which we say often, and then by the way, today is Mercy Sunday, right? Okay, and then the Kamala Youth is present in World Youth Days, right? We are active in World Youth Days. Here's a bag all the way from 2000. Okay, World Youth Day 2000 in Rome. And then and then that's the seventh bit of info. Okay, and the 8th one is I kissed my 3 children goodbye before I drove to Dubai today from Abu Dhabi. 3. Okay, that's the reason. I'll come to that. Okay, so this absolute random 8 things I told you about have one thing in common. And that's what we are celebrating tomorrow. These 2 beautiful people we're celebrating tomorrow. Next one. This was just we are celebrating the canonization. That means raising to sainthood of these 2 beautiful popes tomorrow by Pope Francis. We are hoping even Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI would be there. So it's like 4 popes in one place, these 8 things which I told you, random things which we kind of take for granted today, we have to thank these 2 men for bringing that into our life. That is how decisive their role is in the life of the church and the way the church has impacted the world today. Okay, you can see this, right? Okay, right. So we will come back to some of those points, but I just wanted to start with a small clip. John Paul II, obviously, we know him quite well. He's one of the patrons of Kamala Youth. Do you know that? Okay, that's him there. We always have his picture go up in every meeting, and he's one of the patrons of our group. I mean, I can't tell you how much this group owes to this beautiful person. Okay, because see, we have the current leaders which you see and listen to, but before that, there were many levels of a couple of generations of leaders who have been there before, because this is a group which is how many years old? 20 years old. So, in the beginning, we were simply formed by the words of soon-to-be Saint John Paul II. And I can't stress that enough, and how our lives were literally formed by this man. And so I think we can launch straight into this clip, the first clip. Yeah, and the 7 points, the 7 things which made his papacy special.
Soon the smiling image of John Paul II will once again adorn St. Peter's Square. He will officially be recognized as a saint of the Church, making him an example for Catholics around the world. But in his 26-year pontificate, it can be easy to overlook some of the key points that marked his life and his papacy. So here are a few examples. Humanity. Karol Wojtyła was passionate about life and the arts. He loved poetry and drama, and in fact he used to be an actor himself and wrote a play before he was ordained a priest. A key moment in his life was when he was employed in a chemical factory.
Questa esperienza di un operaio e nello stesso tempo di un seminarista clandestino mi è rimasta per tutta la vita. Nella fabbrica per fare il mio turno 8 ore di giorno o di notte. Ho portato con me alcuni libri. I miei colleghi, vuol dire operai, si sono meravigliati un po', ma non scandalizzati.
He was a pope everybody felt close to. He loved to laugh and wasn't afraid to show it. He was also known for hugging people. He wasn't afraid. He was a man of deep faith who put his trust in God. He prepared for the priesthood at a clandestine seminary founded by the then Cardinal of Krakow. And because of the tense atmosphere, he was ordained in secret. He always challenged everyone to not be afraid of life's difficulties.
Non abbiate paura.
He never denied his health problems. In fact, he would even joke about them every now and then.
Come vedete è un papa un po' deficiente ma non ancora decaduto.
He underlined the importance of conscience instead of hatred, and this, he said, was the best way to counteract materialism. He chose understanding as a path towards democracy. The traveling Pope. John Paul II was the Pope and world leader who traveled the most in history. He visited 129 countries. He took on a total of 146 trips outside of Italy, which adds up to the equivalent of 3 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. And during his journeys, he welcomed meetings with different types of people. His first trip was to Mexico, a country he fell in love with immediately. His last trip was in August 2004, when he traveled to the Lourdes Shrine in the south of France. He died 8 months later. He asked for forgiveness. During the Jubilee in the year 2000, John Paul II asked for forgiveness for the Church's sins. From the Crusades, the Inquisition, divisions within the Church, the persecution of Jews, racism, and social injustice. He even personally forgave Ali Aka, the man who tried to kill him in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981. Accessible saints. John Paul II is also remembered for naming saints different cultures could relate to. During his pontificate, he beatified 1,340 people and canonized 483. That number alone is more than the combined canonizations carried out by his predecessors. Among the saints he proclaimed are parents like Gianna Beretta, indigenous people such as Juan Diego and Catherine Tecahuita. There's also the charismatic Padre Pio, the beatification of Mother Teresa, and Pope John the 23rd. Youth. His genuine attitude triggered an instant connection with young people. He suggested they gather together every 2 or 3 years, and that was the beginning of World Youth Day, The first meeting outside of Rome was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, back in 1987. It's from these gatherings that some of the most moving images of his pontificate were shown to the world. Dialogue with religions. John Paul II built bridges between everyone, even those who didn't share his point of view. He was the first pope to visit a synagogue and address the Jewish community as our older brothers.
Siete nostri fratelli prediletti e in un certo modo si potrebbe dire i nostri fratelli maggiori.
He also visited a mosque in Syria where the tomb of St. John the Baptist is located. He also improved the church relationship with Orthodox, Anglican, and Protestant Christians. He summoned the leaders of all world religions to pray together for peace. John Paul II has gone down in history for many reasons, and it's no wonder that many already call him John Paul II the Great.
I certainly like to call him John Paul the Great. There you go. This is John Paul the Great. I'm not selling it yet. But I thought something which you could keep looking at. It's based on the same beatification portrait. Yeah, and then when John Paul II was elected Pope, he was referred to as the actor and athlete Pope. Okay, he was really amazingly healthy person, and those of us who've kind of lived our youth in the 90s can still vividly remember a lot of his action-packed days. So this, there's this beautiful story about John Paul II when he was elected. Like it was the time where it was when television was suddenly in every home. Suddenly the media was breaking through, and television was an age of the television. And then suddenly we had this pope who, because of his training as an actor and his confidence from theatre, suddenly we had a pope who knew instantly after his election how to act as a pope. You see, so it was just as if he was designed for this television age. And then another incident is when one of his close friends asked him, how do you feel? After his election, a couple of days after his election, they were having dinner together, and this Polish childhood friend of his asked him, so how do you feel now that you're the Pope? How do you feel? Is it any different? So he said, ever since I said accepto, which in Latin means I accept, with a lot of sincerity, just not boasting because it's his friend. He said, ever since I said accepto, I feel that I've always been the Pope. I feel as if I've always been the Pope. So, very sincere answer to a close friend. This is a man cut out. God created him and readied him, cut out to be the Pope. But you'll see soon that it wasn't easy to reach there. And he had a very, very, very traumatic childhood, which we'll come to in a second. But before we go there, more of this record-breaking Pope. Can we have the next slide? Okay, that's one of the Guinness records he holds. The most number of people in history who came to see one man. That record belongs to Blessed John Paul II. This was World Youth Day Manila. That's him over there. Okay. It's, I think, close to 5 million people. So this is still an unbroken record. There have been concerts of, a band people have gone through which is bigger, but for one person drawing such a big crowd, that's the world record. Now, what we must remember then is he also holds the world record for the most photographed person in history. If you take the news archives, the photographs on a single person, he's the most photographed person. So his life witness, his sanctity, especially that of a giant of a saint, also because he lived out his entire life in the public glare of the media. Every action of his was scrutinized by the media. Every little decision he made was scrutinized by the media. So, as you know, the media has its own problems with, choice teaching, women's ordination, marriage of homosexuals and so on. And they would raise all those kind of questions when they talked about the Pope. But then when he died, the entire media was glowing with tributes to him, because you cannot, whatever you oppose of a person's views, you cannot discount a person's life witness. And life witness, like I said, lived out under such public glare. So tomorrow we're going to have a saint, the most visible saint who have ever lived, canonized tomorrow. So this is a huge step forward for Christianity, Catholicism, Christianity especially, Catholicism, because this is a man who he was a prophet. He foretold that what is coming is nothing short of a springtime of Christianity. That means Christianity is going to blossom again. It's because of this beautiful Pope and Pope John before him that we actually have, we feel Catholic and we feel cool about it. These are the guys who made Catholic cool, right? To put it in a nutshell. Okay, so we talk about culture of life. Have you heard of culture of life? Okay, all of us, I think, have heard of culture of life. Thanks to this man, he's the one who's coined the phrase, culture of life. Humanae Vitae is one of his encyclicals, one of his writings of John Paul II, papal magisterial documents of John Paul II. When it came out in 1980, it didn't have a chance. It was reminding people that killing a baby's life for a convenience of a person is a sin. Abortion is a sin. It wasn't very popular. And then even more unpopular was the fact that artificial contraception is a sin. So all these issues. So it was like this author says, it was a dead letter. It didn't have a chance in the 1980s. Then came theology of the body. Okay, so that's again the biographer of John Paul II, George Weigel, says that if there's one thing this Pope will be remembered for a long time, it'll be for what is now known as theology of the body. My wife Reena and I have rejected artificial contraception right from the start of our marriage, and I know for sure, personally, many couples sitting in this room have. Come Alive couples have. Thanks to this man, thanks to the theology of the body, and thanks to the culture of life which he built up. It was not so, and I said 3 children, I kissed 3 children goodbye. Why? Because if you look at the generation just above us, it was not so. 1 child, maximum 2 child. Now young couples are having 4, 5. That's thanks to the labor and kind of unmasking the lie of the contraceptive culture, which John Paul II and before him through the Vatican II, John 23rd brought about. Okay, another beautiful word which we all know thanks to this man is evangelization. Okay, Pope John Paul II popularized the term new evangelization and called for Catholics to reinvigorate their faith and invite others to discover Christ. By the Jubilee year, which is the year 2000, okay, 2000th anniversary of the coming of Christ, of the incarnation. By that time, it was a constant buzzword, and the concrete way the Second Vatican Council was being implemented on the ground. We'll come back to the council a little later when we talk about soon to be Saint John 23rd. It meant, evangelization meant, seeing our faith not just as something to be defended, which was the view earlier, but something to be shared. Okay, we go out and share it. Okay, and another beautiful moment in his pontificate is this. The next slide, please. It was the millennium. He was a man who led the church from the old millennium into the new millennium in 2000 AD. He proclaimed the great Jubilee year, and what you see here is Porta Sancta, that is the holy door, which is only opened once in 50 years when the Jubilee comes up, 58 years when the Jubilee comes up, and then that's John Paul II opening the door in January 2000, 1st of January I think, 2000 AD. Again, the Catholic Church was the only denomination of Christians. Everyone celebrated the Jubilee, celebrated the 2000th anniversary of the incarnation of Jesus. This is a historic fact. But we were the only denomination who had the confidence to bring out this and say, this is what we believe in. And we think you will fall in love with this. You will fall in love with the amazing good news of Christ all over again. Here it is in a modern language. Go discover. You see, no one else had the confidence to put that in front of the world and say, this is what we believe in. Okay, beautiful book. It gave me a lot of life. You have a issue which you don't know what the church teaching is. Just go to the index. You have everything from same-sex relationships to abortion to contraception to everything. So beautiful, clear teaching. Also thanks a lot to his then right-hand man, who later became Pope Benedict XVI. He was the editor-in-chief of this little book there. And then, Then, like I said, but all this kind of journey wasn't very easy for him, right? Can I have the next slide? That's John Paul II around 8 years old, okay? And if you see the boys, if you see any of his childhood pictures, he's not smiling. That's because he did not have a very happy childhood. He lost his mother at 8 years. His elder sister Olga had died before his birth. He lost his elder brother Edmund, who he was close to, when he was 12. He lost his father suddenly when he was 20 years old. You see, so tragedies after tragedies after tragedies. It's so much so that he said, I was not at my mother's death. I was not at my brother's death. I was not at my father's death. At 20, this is the saddest statement you can hear from him. At 20, I had already lost all the people I loved. So it wasn't easy for this man. See, so can you imagine yourself in that situation, 20-year-old man? You'd be crushed, And here's one guy who, his father took him to this shrine in Poland dedicated to Madonna. Showed him and said, this was after he lost his mother, and said, from now on, this will be your mother. And then that's why we have his motto when he became Pope. What was his motto? When he became Pope, Totus Tuus, which in Latin means completely yours, Mary. Totus Tuus Mariae. That's the original what do you call? It's a hymn. It's actually a hymn, Latin hymn, from where he took his motto. So this is one man then who has experienced the power of Jesus' resurrection. by submitting himself to Mary and imitating her surrender to Jesus, he gave all these tragedies back to Jesus through Mary's hands and said, Lord, make me something beautiful. Transform this to something beautiful, something meaningful, something which is beyond death. And here we are, and today we have such a glorious Pope, and who has not just influenced a few people, who has been such a positive influence in the modern world, and millions upon millions of Christians have him to thank for their conversion. You know, I remember one of our founder leaders, Vivek, telling us that if your adult yes to Jesus has come, this is one of the first levels of, first generation of leaders of Carmelite, this is what he told us. He said, if your adult yes came, adult yes to Jesus came during his pontificate, remember that you owe it to him for the prayers he made on your behalf. You see, when you're Pope, when you are the pastor of all those billions of people you're leading, you are literally asking the Lord, and all the conversions which happen, we owe it to him, you know, during that pontificate. So, beautiful man, millions of lives, literally millions and millions of lives impacted. World Youth Day alone is millions and billions of young people, you know. So he's the founder, and like I said at the beginning, I can't stress how grateful we must be as a group today to the words of this beautiful person when we started. I'll just give you a couple of examples. This is a brochure of an outreach which we did, Gospel Rock, in 1996. Okay, 1996, and this each of these brochures, each of these outreaches would actually be based on the theme of that particular World Youth Day. This was like after the youth would come back from the World Youth Day, and then they would use that theme to kind of design an outreach. And here we are. The theme for that particular, that's him over there. The theme of that particular World Youth Day was the words of Peter. Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Beautiful words. And I still remember by heart this quote, which is from here, where he says, it's almost answering Peter's question, to whom shall we go? And he's kind of giving us an answer. And I've remembered it by heart all these years. And he says, and it's there accepted in this little write-up, and he says, the goal and target of our life is He, the Christ, who awaits us, each one personally and all together. Where does He await us? To lead us across the boundaries of time into the eternal embrace of God who loves us. Beautiful words. I still have my hair standing when I say that. Say that again. The goal and target of our life is He, the Christ, who awaits us, each one personally and all together, to lead us across the boundaries of time into the eternal embrace of God who loves us. Okay, so this is a man who lived that conviction, that this is the purpose of human life. The purpose of human life is not just a car or a career, but it's beyond the grave. That's when it even starts the glory of the purpose. So everything else then becomes a means to that end. And yeah. So another beautiful quote which I remember, again, I would say this was formed me personally as a person who wanted to evangelize, wanted to bring people to Christ. This was way before I came to Dubai. This was the first time I listened to Father Gino. He was doing this 10-year preparatory convention for the Jubilee. So this was in 1990. That means 1989, 31st of December. And again, he was quoting John Paul II. He says, We need new evangelizers. See the term new evangelization coming up? We need new evangelizers. New in spirit. That means in zeal, in fervor. New in spirit. New in method. New in strategy. And new in expression. If you look at some of the outreaches we plan today, some of the sessions we plan in Come, we all use all these three. We have a new zeal which our parents did not have, right? We have we are constantly aware of what strategy to use to attract youth. So we should talk the language. We should be relevant to the youth. We can't preach an old rusted way of proclaiming the good news. And then third is new in expression. Okay, all the different things you see in this room are testament to that. This man's vision for the church being fulfilled right now. So I want to show you one other clip of this man towards the end of his life, right? Like when you imitate Christ, you also share his cross. Okay, sooner or later. So we have a self-emptying God, right? We have a self-emptying God. John Paul II, being one of the greatest Christian pastors, Christian leaders, Christian pastors, for me, you watch this clip, for me this is the moment, as a pastor, this is the moment of death, even before he died. Okay, you need to go to 25.05 because it's a long clip.
And you could click.
We even tested.
But now Danuta Mikulovska.
We even tested it.
Yeah,
But now Danuta Mikulovska feels compelled to do just that.
Just after that. Yeah.
The Pope's signature noticeably unsteady, but the handwritten words still legible, with heartfelt wishes. For Danuta, the letters are a treasure, a comfort. Memories of a moment.
25. Okay.
Moment wspaniały.
Okay. This was the
3
last
days
time
after
he appeared
Easter,
at that window.
the Pope tried to speak to the masses once more.
We even tested it beforehand.
Archbishop Dziwisz remembers the Pope's rehearsal and his frustration after his second failed attempt.
Nothing was coming out. He couldn't speak anymore.
Microfono non serviva, no?
I wouldn't have given him the microphone if I didn't think he could speak. But maybe it was the emotion of the moment, or God just wanted it that way. When he gave the sign of the cross, it was very moving. And then, nothing.
This would be the last time the world would see John Paul.
Through his inevitable suffering, through his last moments, yes. But he was...
For me, this is a very important moment in his life, because here's a man who was a darling of the media, who has spoken and was a great communicator, great orator. He reached out to people through, iconic gestures. He was a person who, of a lot of, symbolic gestures. And then finally, the moment where he couldn't talk to his flock. And finally, there's actually more to that clipping, but they sandwiched it with so much of trash. This is CNN. I was looking for a uninterrupted clip, I couldn't. And he's frustrated. At a certain point, he holds his head, and then finally he just blesses the people. He just blesses the people, and then disappears. And for me, I told you about the cross, about the self-emptying God we have. For me, this is a moment where he poured out his last bit for his bride, the church, like Christ. You see, this is the church he serves. This is the church he has professed to die for. That's what a cardinal does, you see. So that was the moment when he actually, before he died, he poured himself out, like Jesus poured himself out on the cross, completely to the last bit for the people. And you must, rewind back to his glorious days, where he, I remember Father Gino telling us, he's met him several times, telling us this is one man who changed papacy forever. He redefined papacy. Every pope who came after him had to do things the way he had done it. He had, Father used to tell us, this is a man who lived the papacy to the fullest, up to his fingertips. These are his words, So for that man to come to that stage and serenely accept that. He was very, very, it was a glorious, powerful soul trapped in a warped, sickly body. You can see it so clearly. That was the strength of John Paul II. That was something where even when he died, he taught us a lot. The way he died, the way he, suffered till the end, but did not resign, because he wanted people to see that every human life is valued at every stage. So we have this beautiful person there in imitation of Christ. Okay, so and today and tomorrow what are we going to do? We share. So those who die with Christ will be raised up with Him in resurrection. Happy Easter. So tomorrow we're going to share in the glory which now God has given him. Okay, amazing person. Okay, could we? So this is the easy part. Okay, now we go to a person who we don't know much about. Soon to be Saint John 23rd. Okay, in one sentence, I'll tell you how important he is. Okay, but for this man, we would not have John Paul II. Simple. Period. That's why, when Pope Francis first announced that he's going to canonize him along with John Paul II, I was really disappointed, I must be honest. Because I said, here is a man of the millennium. Here is a man who changed papacy forever. Here is a man who was on the time cover for many times over. And, John 23rd with him, it's taking the glory out of him, this was my monkey mind. But then as I settled down, okay, I began to see why God must have willed it this way, right? You like Pope Francis? You like Pope Francis? Okay. So then you like him also. They're very, very, very alike. Okay, can you play that clip, please? Next clip. Of John 23rd, but there's more to his story. Okay, beautiful Pope. Like I said, our generation will not be so quick to understand the spectacular intervention the Holy Spirit made in the church and in the world through Blessed John 23rd. In order to understand that, we need to go back to his election as Pope. Okay. So this was when he was already 77 years old man. Okay, just after the reign of Pope Pius Venerable Pius XII. Okay, that was a long reign, and then you must remember that till that point, okay, for many generations, many popes, they were all chosen. They were all Italians, chosen from the royal families of Italy. They're all princes of Italy. They were being chosen as popes, good popes. But it was the papal court was looking like a royal court, like an emperor's court. You see, but then the World War had happened, and then the landscape outside was changing dramatically after the World War. Okay. So suddenly this guy has the 77-year-old Roncalli. That was his name before he chose the name John 23rd. Roncalli. He was from a humble guy from So when the humble Cardinal Roncalli from an ordinary family, who came to the conclave with a return train ticket to Venice. He was the Archbishop Cardinal of Venice. When he was chosen Pope, he told the conclave, this is fact, okay? Brother cardinals, you made a mistake. Please go back and rediscern. This were his words, So finally, when they convinced him that no, this is the wish of the Holy Spirit, there was a big strategy behind choosing a 77-old man to be the Pope. I didn't know the time had gone so much. Okay, I'll quickly go to his story. I think the Holy Spirit, had his. He was supposed to be a caretaker Pope. 77-year-old. Okay, by the time a strong leader will emerge, this guy will be dead and gone. So good arrangement. So that was the whole strategy. But this man actually changed the whole direction of the church, and then gave it a new language to speak to the changed modern world. Okay, let's look at that clip, please. Clip 4.
The date of October the 11th is the anniversary of the opening of the Second Vatican Council in 1962. An interesting point not known to many people is that Pope John Paul II assigned October the 11th as the feast day of Blessed Pope John the 23rd, and not his day of death, which was June 3rd, 1963. Pope John the 23rd and the Council are therefore forever linked together. The diocesan seminary at Bergamo and came under the influence of Prosicor. In 1921 he was called to Rome by the Pope. Roncalli was chosen by Pius XII for the difficult post action. In 1958, at nearly 77 years of age, he was elected Pope upon the death of Pius XII. He was expected by many to be a caretaker and transitional Pope, but he astonished the Church and the world with his energy and reforming spirit. He expanded and internationalized the College of Cardinals, called the First Diocesan Synod of Rome in history, revised the Code of Canon Law, and called the Second Vatican Council with the specific purpose of renewing the life of the Church and its teachings and reuniting Christians throughout the world. In his opening address...
I'll cut that short since we are running out of time. His motto, I'll come straight to the next slide. Yeah, this is a slide which the Diocese of John 23rd. This is a beautiful picture. It says Gaudet Mater Ecclesia. That means Mother Church rejoices. This is actually John 23rd's words when he opened the Second Vatican Council. What is the Second Vatican Council? It's an ecumenical council of the Church. It's a very rare event in the Church. Normally it would be called only to settle disputes. When there's a huge dogma issue and then people are going away because there's a confusion in some interpretation of some laws. But this Pope called it so that the Church can have a modern language. He said, open the windows, let fresh air come in. Because the Church was getting very defensive. It would just expel whoever did not follow the rules. He did not have an attitude to go out and evangelize. You see, all that we have him to thank. So I love the way both are holding the same cross. Okay, because you have the father of Vatican II, but it is years later because he died. He died even before Vatican II was over. You see, and then it was years later, in the 27 years come. The 27 years of papacy of John Paul II, that the legacy which was started by John 23rd came to fulfillment. Okay, so you can see that that's why I said no John 23rd, there wouldn't be John Paul II. So Mother Earth rejoices. Okay, so a beautiful So I'll conclude with this one question. Okay, what is it that made these men saints? Okay, I'll come to beloved John Paul II. He said to his biographer who was interviewing him to write his biography, he said, "You cannot figure me out from the outside in, only the other way around." Okay, so this is what in other words, he says, it was John Paul's soul in which hundreds of millions of human beings found an exemplar of decency and an icon of hope. It was the character formed by that soul that made him a champion of resistance against the tyranny of diminished expectations, personal and political. This was the conviction which drove Karol Wojtyła. Man, listen to this, okay? This is the core of his being. Man is incapable of understanding himself fully without Christ. Christ is a key to understanding that great and fundamental reality that is man. He cannot understand who he is, nor what his true dignity is, nor what his true vocation is, nor what his final end is. He cannot understand any of this without Christ. Okay, this was his conviction, and this was what drove him and drove all his accomplishments. We can trace back to this conviction. I'm going to give you a beautiful prayer which the Vatican has just released, the official prayer to John Paul II, Saint John Paul II, and we will use that as our closing prayer today. We close. I'll give that out, and then meanwhile, just want to end with a collection of images which I have of John Paul II. I thought of focusing on the way he encounters Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. That's a key for me to understand, to have a glimpse into his soul, a soul of a saint, you see. And it's visible. If you look carefully, I think it's visible. You can see how he gazed at Jesus. We can learn a lot from that. Thank you, and God bless.
The date of October the 11th is the anniversary of the opening of the Second Vatican Council in 1962. An interesting point not known to many people is that Pope John Paul II assigned October the 11th as the feast day of Blessed Pope John the 23rd, and not his day of death, which was June 3rd, 1963. Pope John the 23rd and the Council are therefore forever linked together. As time moves forward, today's younger generations really don't know this good and great Pope. Angelo Roncalli, the third of 13 children, was born to a family of sharecroppers on November 25, 1881, at Sotto il Monte in northern Italy. At the age of 12, he entered the diocesan seminary at Bergamo and came under the influence of progressive leaders of the Italian social movement. He was ordained priest on August 10, 1904, and soon appointed the secretary to the new bishop of Bergamo, learning from him forms of social action and gaining an understanding of the problems of the working classes. He also taught at the diocesan seminary. In 1915, he was called to the army in World War I and served on the front lines in the Medical and Chaplaincy Corps. In 1921, he was called to Rome by the Pope and made director of the Society for the Propagation of the Faith in Italy. He was consecrated archbishop in 1925 and sent to Bulgaria. In 1934, he was sent to Turkey and Greece in the diplomatic corps of the Church. When he was 64 years old, in 1944, an age when most people are thinking of retirement, Roncalli was chosen by Pius XII for the difficult post of nuncio to Paris, where he worked to heal the divisions caused by the Second World War. At age 72, he was made Cardinal and Patriarch of Venice, and he had charge of a large diocese for the first time in his life. He quickly won the affection of his people, visiting parishes, caring for the working classes, establishing new parishes, and developing forms of social action. In 1958, at nearly 77 years of age, he was elected Pope upon the death of Pius XII. He was expected by many to be a caretaker and transitional pope, but he astonished the Church and the world with his energy and reforming spirit. He expanded and internationalized the College of Cardinals, called the first diocesan synod of Rome in history, revised the Code of Canon Law, and called the Second Vatican Council with the specific purpose of renewing the life of the Church and its teachings and reuniting Christians throughout the world. In his opening address on October the 11th, 1962, at the beginning of the Vatican Council, Pope John said these words: "In the everyday exercise of our pastoral ministry, greatly to our sorrow, we sometimes have to listen to those who, although consumed with zeal, do not have much judgment or balance. To them, the modern world is nothing but betrayal and ruination. They claim that this age is far worse than previous ages, and they go on as though they had learned nothing from history, and yet history is the great teacher of life. They behave as though the first 5 centuries saw complete vindication of the Christian idea and the Christian cause, and as though religious liberty was never put in jeopardy in the past. We feel bound to disagree with these prophets of misfortune who are forever forecasting calamity, as though the end of the world is imminent. Our task is not merely to hoard this precious treasure of doctrine, as though obsessed with the past, but to give ourselves eagerly and without fear to the task that this present age demands of us, and in doing so, we will be faithful to what the Church has done in the past 20 centuries." Then on the night of October the 11th, 1962, the opening of the Council, Papa Giovanni appeared at his window in answer to the chanting and singing below from a crowd estimated at perhaps 500,000 people assembled in St. Peter's Square.
Si direbbe che persino la luna si è affrettata stasera, osservatela in alto, a guardare a questo spettacolo.
And many were young people who came in procession with candles and singing. It was a spontaneous World Youth Day long before they began formally. His impromptu window speech that night is now part of Rome's legends. It's known as the Discorso della Luna. In a high-pitched voice, he said, carissimi giovani, dearest children, I hear your voice." In the simplest language, he told them about his hopes for the council. He pointed out the moon that was shining brightly upon the crowd, the moon that was observing this spectacle in the square. And then he said, "My voice is an isolated one, but it echoes the voice of the whole world. Here, in effect, the whole world is represented in you." He then concluded, "Tornando a casa, as you return to your homes, give your little children a kiss. Tell them it's from the Pope." The emotion that night was palpable. The patriarch, the father, who was bearing the burden of age and illness, gave and generated love with all of his being. On that first night of the Second Vatican Council, a new era began for the Church, an era that continues to bear fruit in today's Church. The years of work and compromise, countless words and conversations, endless wrangling over documents would both produce and accompany a sea of change in the Church. However, for all of the lofty words and texts and documents that went into the Council, the historic gathering on October the 11th, 1962, that opening night of Vatican II, was infused with the deep and stirring humanity of its author. On his deathbed in early June 1963, Papa Giovanni said, "It's not that the gospel has changed. It is that we have begun to understand it better. Those who have lived as long as I have were enabled to compare different cultures and traditions and know that the moment has come to discern the signs of the times, to seize the opportunity, and to look far ahead." Pope John thought that the Council would conclude within a few months, but instead, he died before its second session. When he died on June 3, 1963, he won the widespread affection of Christians and non-Christians alike. Papa Giovanni, as he was called, the good Pope, endeared himself to millions of people throughout the world. You see, Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli was a human being more concerned with his faithfulness than his image, more concerned with those around him than with his own desires. With an infectious warmth and vision, he stressed the relevance of the Church in a rapidly changing society and made the Church's deepest truths stand out in a modern world. The great philosopher Santayana wrote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." As we remember John the 23rd on his feast day on October the 11th each year, and behold his bold, daring vision for the Church and for humanity, let us beg his intercession that God's word be known and loved in the Church and in the world. For all of the lofty words, documents, and texts that flow from the Church, let us pray that they be first infused with the deep and stirring humanity of John the 23rd, who revived the Church from her historical and ecclesial slumber at a moment when no one really expected it. Blessed John the 23rd, pray for us. Help us to keep the authentic message of the Second Vatican Council alive in the Church today.
nostra